Today, we're going to open up the briefing on what might be the most sophisticated, highly trained force on the entire planet. The microscopic army that's operating inside your body this very second. But believe me, this isn't just any army.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if? Because the truth is, you do. This isn't some kind of science fiction movie. This is the normal, everyday physiology of your immune system, a totally mind-blowing network of cells, tissues, and organs, all working together in perfect harmony to defend you from a constant barrage of invaders.
So, who are the actual soldiers in this army? Well, the elite special forces are a group of cells called lymphocytes. And just look at this roster. The vast majority, a commanding 70 to 80%, are the T cells. Then you've got the B cells, making up about 10 to 15%, and rounding out the team are the versatile NK cells. Let's get to know these different divisions, shall we? Okay, so these three cell types, your T cells, B cells, and NK cells, they're basically the foundation of what we call your adaptive immunity. You can think of adaptive immunity as the super smart part of your defense force. It's the system that learns, it remembers, and it launches these incredibly specific attacks against threats it's seen before. It's the real intelligence branch of your internal army. You know, one of the most fascinating things is how these cells look versus what they do. If you put them under a regular microscope, all three types of lymphocytes, well, they look pretty much identical. You can't tell them apart. Scientists actually have to use these really specialized techniques, like something called flow cytometry, to spot the unique protein markers on their surface. It's kind of like they all wear the same basic uniform, but their true job is defined by this invisible, highly specialized equipment they carry. Let's start with the big guys, the dominant force on the field, the T cells. Since they make up the bulk of your lymphocyte army, it's no surprise they have some of the most important jobs. These are your strategists, your field commanders, and your elite assassins who take on the most direct and dangerous missions.
And here's the thing, every single T-cell recruit has to go through this incredibly rigorous training program. They don't just pop into existence ready for battle. No, they mature in a special organ right behind your breastbone called the thymus. You can literally think of the thymus as the West Point or Sandhurst for T-cells. It's an elite military academy where they learn one crucial lesson: who's friend and who's foe.
And the final exam at this academy? It is intense. It's a two-part pass or die test. First up is positive selection. A T-cell has to prove it can even recognize your own body's communication signals. If it can't, it's useless and gets eliminated. But the second part, negative selection, is absolutely critical. Any T-cell that reacts too strongly to your own cells, meaning it might attack them, is also eliminated. This is the system that prevents friendly fire, what we know as autoimmune disease. Only the sharpest, most disciplined cells get to graduate.
Now, the T cells that make it through that grueling exam, they get to specialize into two main branches. On one hand, you've got the helper T cells. Think of them as the brilliant field commanders who are coordinating the entire battle. And on the other hand, you have the cytotoxic T cells, the deadly assassins who carry out targeted eliminations.
So let's look at the mission briefing for a helper T cell. These guys are the ultimate quarterbacks of the immune system. They don't usually fight enemies directly. Instead, their job is to activate and direct all the other parts of the immune system. They're the ones telling B cells, hey, start making weapons. They supercharge the cleanup crews, and they send out the signals to recruit more troops to the battlefield. Honestly, without them, the whole response would be total chaos.
And this is where it gets even cooler. Even within the helper T-cell command, you have subspecializations. So depending on the specific signals they get from the field, they can become a Th1 cell, which is an expert at fighting certain bacteria, or a Th2 cell, which is crucial for fighting off things like parasites. It's an incredibly adaptable command structure that tailors the response to whatever enemy you're facing.
Now let's talk about the other branch, the assassins. These are your cytotoxic T cells, and their target list is short, specific, and deadly. They are trained to hunt down and eliminate any of your own body's cells that have gone rogue. We're talking cells that have been hijacked by a virus, cells that have turned cancerous, or even foreign cells from something like an organ transplant.
And their method of takedown is, well, it's up close and personal. A cytotoxic T cell physically latches onto its target. Then it unleashes these powerful chemical weapons. One is called perforant, which basically punches holes in the target cell's outer wall. Then, another weapon called granzymes goes through those holes and triggers a self-destruct command. It's a clean, efficient, and perfectly targeted kill.
All right, let's pivot to the second major division in our army, the B cells. So, if T cells are the commanders and assassins out on the front lines, you can think of B cells as the brilliant engineers and intelligence officers working behind the scenes, designing and mass-producing the absolute perfect weapon for the job.
So a B cell's career starts with its training, which happens in the bone marrow. Once it's good to go, it goes out and patrols the body as what's called a naive B cell, just waiting to run into the one specific enemy it's designed to recognize. And when it finally finds that enemy and gets the go signal, which often comes from a helper T cell, it undergoes this incredible transformation into one of two very important roles. The first role it can take is the plasma cell. And this is the B cell in full-on production mode. It literally becomes a dedicated factory churning out thousands upon thousands of these highly specific protein weapons called antibodies every single second. It's an insane rate of production, and these antibodies just flood your system, hunting down and neutralizing the enemy. The second path is just as crucial: becoming a memory B cell. These guys are the Army's veterans, its living historical archives. They don't actively fight in the current battle, but they stick around for years, sometimes your entire life, holding on to the blueprint for the weapon that defeated a past enemy. If that same invader ever dares to show its face again, these memory cells mean your army can launch a response that is exponentially faster and more powerful. This, right here, is the entire reason vaccines work.
And finally, let's talk about that third group, the natural killer cells, or NK cells. Think of these guys as the Army's first responders. While the T cells need a whole intelligence briefing and activation sequence, NK cells are part of your innate immune system. They're the sentinels, always on patrol, ready to engage any suspicious targets immediately, no questions asked.
This slide really highlights the difference in their strategy. A cytotoxic T cell is part of that adaptive response. It needs a commander's orders and has to recognize a very specific enemy flag or antigen. But an NK cell, it's part of the innate response. It doesn't need specific orders. It just looks for general signs of trouble, like a cell that's missing the proper "I'm a friend" ID badge on its surface.
And their methods of attack are super versatile. Just like the T cell assassins, they can use that perforin weapon to punch holes in targets. But they've got other tools in their kit too. They can trigger a different kind of self-destruct sequence, and maybe most importantly, they release these powerful alarm signals, called cytokines, to alert the rest of the immune army that, hey, we've got a problem over here.
So here's the main takeaway. None of these soldiers, none of these divisions work in a vacuum. The real power of your immune system isn't just in the strength of one particular type of cell, but in their incredible, seamless teamwork.
So let's just recap the whole army. You've got your T cells acting as both the high-level commanders directing the whole operation and the elite assassins for targeted kills. You've got your B cells, which are your intelligence division and your weapons factory, designing and mass-producing those perfect antibodies. And then you have the NK cells, the ever-watchful sentinels and first responders. Each division has a clear, absolutely vital role in keeping you safe.
When you step back and think about it, the precision, the training, and the coordination of this internal army are just breathtaking. It identifies and wipes out countless threats every single day, and you never even know it's happening. But it does leave us with one really critical question to chew on. What happens when this perfectly balanced system breaks down? What happens when its own soldiers turn against the very body they are sworn to protect? Well, that's a story for another time. Thanks for joining this explainer.